Hi, and welcome to News and Reviews live from Monterrey. Bienvenidos a nuestra sesión de noticias en vivo desde Monterrey. As we've done in previous sessions, we're going to try to keep bouncing back and forth between English and Spanish. Vamos a intentar realizar esta transición tanto en inglés como en español. Entonces aguántanos en nuestros rebotes entre idiomas. So, joining us today on the hot seat is Dr. Jason Widener, Professor of International Relations at the University of Monterrey. Thanks, Jason, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. Mucho gusto. Gracias.
So we've got some major news to come through regarding the campaign for the week, and then we're going to have kind of a few minutes of general commentary on the state of the election so far. I think we have to start, Jason, with the news about Nestora Salgado. For those of you who don't know, Nestora Salgado is a candidate for Morena, for López Obrador's party, for the state of Guerrero, and her name came up in the second debate, brought up by Jose Antonio Meade, who accused her of being a kidnapper, and said, AMLO, you have a kidnapper on your list of candidates, which seems to be like, what? When you dig deeper, you realize what's really behind this, and why what Meade did is so irresponsible on a lot of levels. As part of the drug war, some states were really hit to the point that the states like Michoacán, states like Guerrero, states now like Tamaulipas, were hit so hard with spates of violence that the situation simply spun out of control at different times since the drug war has been going on over the last 12 years. This spurred local communities who felt abandoned by both local, state, and federal police, kind of left on their own in the spate of killings and mutilations and all kinds of things, to take matters into their own hands and create what was called community policing or self-defenses, the autodefensas. This has a constitutional framework to it, the rights of people to defend themselves, but it also has, especially the state of Guerrero, there's a state law that allows for the formation of a community policing, which is what happened here. Nestora Salgado was the head of the community policing in the pueblo of Olinalá in Guerrero. She was at the time accused of kidnapping. It was pretty much a frame up by the federal government, which I'll get to in a minute. She was then imprisoned for almost 3 years, 2 years and 8 months, cleared of all charges, but only after having spent almost 3 years of her life in prison. Quite similar to the case of the Dr. Manuel Mireles in Michoacán, who also spent 3 years in prison and is also on the Morena list of proportional representation in the state, in his case, in the state of Michoacán. The case came back to light when Meade mentioned it in the debate, and then surprise, 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 the Federal Attorney General's office, the Fiscalía, decides to reopen the case of Nestora Salgado, basically appealing her exoneration on the state level. And there's going to be a hearing about this in the middle of June to guarantee that this stays in the news throughout kind of this hot last month of the campaign. In related news, the PRI went even to the extent of creating a spot about it, right for radio and television, saying that Nestora Salgado is a kidnapper, which fortunately the National Electoral Institute said had to be taken out from the air because it was defamatory. So, Jason, let's start with this. I think there's a lot to discuss here. Kind of this idea of the breakdown of the rule of law to the point where people have to resort to self-defenses. Then, when they do resort to self-defenses, the federal government kind of swoops down on them. In the case of Salgado and Mireles, and imprisons the leaders because. Mireles specifically says because the federal government doesn't want the drug trade to stop. They don't want these states to be cleaned. There is that much infiltration between organized crime and all levels of government that they liked the idea at first of self-defenses and community policing, but they didn't want it to go too far. They didn't actually want them to succeed. and then they'd come down and take these people in. In the case of Nestora Salgado, the community policing in Guerrero has what's called a re-education function. The community police there, if they apprehended a criminal, wouldn't send them directly to jail, but would try, and this is very much practiced in indigenous communities, in the work on the usos y costumbres model. They don't work on a straight punitive jail model. They really try to work on a re-education model and trying to integrate people back into their community, which is what the state law in Guerrero provides for. In the case of Nestora Salgado, some mothers approached the community police and said, "Our children are out of control. Please help, re-educate them. Please just help them get out of the situation they're in." It was later discovered that these same parents were offered money and scholarships for their kids to then say, "Oh, our kids have been kidnapped by Nestora Salgado." This is kind of the context there. And this was the basis for which she was arrested. And then they later found that these charges were bogus. So let's start there. What degree of kind of societal breakdown do we get to if you have to get to the point of creating kind of legalized self-defense, armed self-defense groups in town, which then in themselves become the target both of organized crime on one side and the government on the other? They're kind of squeezed between the two.
Right. Well, of course, Max Weber's famous definition of the state has to do with that institution that has the monopoly on the legitimate use
Of force.
Of force, right? So clearly, we have a situation in Mexico where we have a lack of governance in multiple levels in many areas, and including what's probably, for many people, the most basic element of the state, right, which is providing security for the population. It's understandable on the one hand that the state would be a bit jealous of conserving its authority and not wanting to, have private individuals organizing these self-defense units. And not that these self-defense units haven't been without their own problems. In the case of Michoacan, there was a lot of documented abuses. And the idea that, the citizens themselves can be completely immune to the influence and the infiltrations of the narcos is probably a bit of a myth as well. So, yeah, it's a bad situation all around. But obviously, what I'd like to point out in this case is it does appear that the accusation by Meade against Salgado was completely without merit, was inflammatory, was, as you said, even defamation and potentially dangerous. Obviously, there's a big political manipulation going on. But I think, the broader tactic here is to try to discredit López Obrador's plan for amnesty and his plan to trying to deal with the problem of the narco-trafficking, because in a tweet that Meade responded, when he got a lot of pushback to people pointing out that, hey, this is a bogus accusation, Meade doubled down and was like, it's amazing that people are still trying to defend, this person. And he said, the amnesty really, this is what amnesty looks like, right? So he's trying to plant the idea in people's minds that AMLO's proposal for dealing with the problem of the narco-trafficking and the organized crime that has often been described in terms of amnesty, that basically it means exonerating criminals and letting them walk away. And so that's what the tactic is here. How effective it's going to be, I'm not sure. But at least, in maybe some voters' minds, is going to muddy the waters and maybe add that element of doubt that people have regarding López Obrador's strategy for dealing with, organized crime and violence in the country.
It is kind of an interesting dual discourse. Kind of on one hand, they're trying to paint López Obrador as kind of associated with wild, violent, kidnapping radicals on one side. So on one hand, it's the old idea of the violence left that won't play within the rule of law. But on the other hand, it's the too soft López Obrador who is too soft on crime and will let people go free and even wind up in the Senate. So it's kind of like, well, which is it? If you kind of really try to pick it apart, there's a contradiction in there, isn't there?
Well, I mean, I guess in their minds, they probably go together in the sense that the being too soft on crime is basically not upholding the law, right? In that your sympathies are with the criminals, right? And I think that's the picture they're trying to frame. Now, of course, it's incredibly hypocritical for especially Meade and the PRI, who have been the party and the government of complete impunity and of criminals on a massive scale, including giving water to children with cancer instead of their chemotherapy.
The Duarte government.
So. That's been a big reaction to Meade. Is when he said he's on the side of the victims, it's like, oh really? Is that right? Ayotzinapa, Apatzingán, Veracruz, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, clearly it's a political maneuver. It'll be interesting to see, I guess, how effective, if at all, it is.
I think the other point to be made here is the political use of the judiciary apparatus. This is something that Anaya complained about when the PRI brought up the case of his enrichment in the case of the industrial building he built, the 54 million pesos of questionable enrichment with phantom enterprise and all that. And Anaya cried foul, saying, "This is the political use of the judiciary to attack me," which doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't do what he did, but he had a point about the political use of the judiciary, and here we see it again. So the PRI will go after one candidate for one thing, and there's the judiciary arm against them. And now, a case that had been essentially closed 2 years ago, I mean, it's not that recent, is now being reopened. Basically, the federal government is appealing the state decision of Nestor Salgado to bring it into the federal ambit and see if they can reopen the case and get her candidacy withdrawn.
Yeah, I mean, there's no independent judiciary in Mexico.
Yeah.
There just isn't. And so if López Obrador ends up being elected, it's going to be a big challenge that he's going to face, is how do you transition towards a truly independent judiciary and system of law and justice in the country. I mean, it's a huge challenge, it's a huge problem in Mexico.
Okay. Quiero hacer un repaso muy breve. Estamos hablando del caso de Nestora Salgado, que era en su momento la jefa de la policía comunitaria de Orinalá, Guerrero, en esos momentos muy álgidos y muy calientes en el estado de Guerrero, donde las autodefensas, como en Michoacán, con el doctor Mireles, y las policías comunitarias en Guerrero, se organizaban por el abandono en que se quedaban por la policía de todos los niveles. En su caso, le acusaron de secuestro. Fue básicamente una trampa porque la policía comunitaria, que por cierto, hay un marco legal en eso, hay una ley estatal en Guerrero que permite, que fomenta la formación de policías comunitarias. Esas policías comunitarias también tienen una función de reeducación porque no querían seguir el modelo punitivo de mandar a todos directamente a las cárceles. Ahí había unos padres de familia y madres que se acercaron a ellos y dijeron: ayúdanos con nuestros hijos. Ellos se encargaron y luego las liberaron. Luego resultó que esos padres, madres de familia, habían recibido o al menos el ofrecimiento de dinero y becas con tal de acusar a Nestor Salgado de secuestro. Entonces hay toda una trampa en su contra. Ella aún así pasó casi 3 años de su vida en la cárcel, fue exonerada, y ahora justo en esta semana, a raíz de lo que dijo Meade en el debate, volvieron a abrir el caso y la Fiscalía Federal quiere reabrir el caso, apelarlo a nivel federal. Entonces, como hemos comentado en inglés, esto abre una serie de cuestionamientos acerca de la erosión o la inexistencia del Estado de Derecho, el uso faccioso del Poder Judicial, y el problema de volver a abrir algo así con una acusación tan difamatoria que puede poner en riesgo la vida de varias personas involucradas.
Uh-huh. Y un punto que yo hice en inglés es que es parte de una táctica de Meade de deslegitimar la propuesta de AMLO sobre la amnistía, ¿no? Es vincular el concepto de amnistía con ser permisivo con los delincuentes, con la delincuencia, de hasta favorecer a una, ¿cómo se llama? Kidnapper, secuestradora, ¿no? Supuestamente, sí. ¿No? Entonces, es obviamente una táctica de campaña para poner en duda y cuestionar y provocar miedo alrededor del plan de AMLO sobre su propuesta de amnistía y su plan más general de cómo lidiar con el problema del narcotráfico y crimen organizado, ¿no?
Entonces ya han ido en contra de Néstor Salgado, ya han ido en contra de Napoleón Urrutia, el ex jefe del sindicato de mineros, que le acusan de crímenes, ¿no? de desfalco. No han tocado la figura del doctor Mireles todavía. No sé si esto viene en camino o si él tiene pues un grado de prestigio internacional, porque él salió en ese documental Cartel Lands, uh-huh. ¿no? Que ya no quieran tocarlo, o si esto viene en camino, ¿no? Eso queda, veremos, ¿no? Let's go on to the second story. We can come back to Néstor Salgado. Don't forget that when we're done here with our openers, you can participate with your questions and your comments. Just drop them right in Facebook Live, and we'll include them in the program. The second story, kind of history repeating itself as farce, and then what comes after farce, is the story of, well, we're here in the state of Nuevo León. Nuevo León's own independent governor, Jaime Rodríguez Calderón, known rather ironically, more and more ironically as each day goes by, as El Bronco. It was revealed by the National Electoral Institute just this week that they have determined that besides the falsified signatures that we already knew about, the photocopies, the fake names, all of the ridiculous things he did to collect the signatures in the first place, which in themselves are crimes. Using falsified names, falsifying documents is itself a crime. It is now revealed that he used state employees in the state of Nuevo León to collect signatures on work time, which is another crime, and also received 12 million pesos in illegal financing from companies. Mexican electoral law, you can receive financing, private financing from individuals, but not from companies. So 12 million pesos in irregular financing. With all of that, they're not going to withdraw his candidacy. So it leads you to the question of what exactly do you have to do to have your candidacy withdrawn? Community activists like Néstor Salgado wind up in prison for 3 years on trumped-up charges. Somebody like El Bronco can commit every electoral law in the book. He is apparently going to be fined 700,000 pesos. Now, let's keep in mind that there's 12 million in irregular financing to receive, so a 700,000 fine is pretty humorous. And we'll see if that actually even is approved on Monday. So that's one thing. And I want to open this up here. We were riding in the taxi from the airport, and the taxi driver was saying, he said he was going to serve 6 years, and then he decided to jump chapulinear like a grasshopper right into the presidential race. What can we make of a presidential candidate who falsifies signatures, who uses state employees to collect signatures, who gets illegal fundraising, and then is able to stay on the ballot? And what does it say about the Electoral Institute that they seem powerless to stop, or unwilling to stop, a candidate like El Bronco from doing whatever he wants?
Well, I mean, for a lot of people, and I would probably agree with this, the Bronco candidacy never had any serious intention or never had any realistic chance of winning the presidency, and was more of a spoiler against AMLO, right? I think the idea was for the PAN and for the PRI that Bronco would peel away votes from AMLO, that he would appeal to some of the same constituency some of the same demographics, and therefore, rob some votes from AMLO. And that seems to have been his main purpose in this campaign. And so I think from that perspective, it's only logical that the powers that be, would have ultimately some say as far as his ability to be on the ballots or not, because that's how things work in Mexico.
Indeed. Entonces, para retomar esta noticia en español, se reveló esta semana que Jaime Rodríguez Calderón, además de las firmas falsas de las que ya sabíamos, ya se revelaron también que empleados del gobierno de estado fueron obligados a recolectar firmas para el banco en horario hábil en sus horas de trabajo. También recibió 12 millones de pesos en financiamiento irregular a través de personas morales, empresas, cuando la ley solo permite donativos de personas físicas. Y con todo eso, solo va a recibir una multa de 700,000 pesos, ¿no? Eso a la luz de los 12 millones de financiamiento irregular es bastante absurdo. La justificación es que, bueno, tal vez fue financiamiento irregular, pero no ha rebasado el tope de gasto. Y esta es la única cosa que puede justificar, ¿no? Retirar una candidatura. Entonces puedes hacer todo lo que quieras, con tal de que no rebases el tope de campaña. Para los que seguimos la campaña de 2012, sabemos que Enrique Peña Nieto rebasó el tope de gasto de campaña exponenciales veces. No le pasó nada. De hecho, el único candidato en 2012 que fue acusado por el INE de rebasar el tope de gasto de campaña fue López Obrador, ¿no? Entonces, esto abre cuestionamientos serios acerca de, ¿sería posible que AMLO gane, como parece que va a ganar la elección, solo para que su victoria sea posteriormente, como mencionó Javier la otra noche, sea posteriormente tumbado por el Tribunal Electoral por un tecnicismo así después de la elección, ¿no? ¿No? Como un tipo golpe técnico, un golpe judicial, que dice, no, AMLO rebasó el tope de gasto, la elección queda anulada, ¿no? Eso, esperamos que no, pero bueno, abre esos tipos de cuestionamientos. Third bit of news for our opener. Speaking of López Obrador, he was in Iguala, Guerrero, just yesterday, which is where the 43 students of the normal rural school of Ayotzinapa were disappeared several years ago. He was there at a rally. The parents of the 43 missing students tried to get into the rally. They were originally blocked by security. AMLO said, let them through. And they opened a very direct questioning of AMLO, and they said that they would do this with all candidates, as they absolutely should. What AMLO said is, in the case of the 43 missing students, he wants to set up a commission, essentially a truth commission, with United Nations involvement to get to the bottom of what happened. I think it's almost 100% clear that the Army was involved in some fashion in this. There has been some worry from conservative circles that the Army will lose their prestige if it's found out that they were involved. I think worry from left-wing circles that the Army would attempt to sabotage or do something against the civilian government if the investigation were to proceed too far into their participation in Ayotzinapa. AMLO continues to make the point that he tries to be very careful with this, that we're not trying to attack the Army. What we want to do is actually improve the image of the Army, and the only way to do that is to get to the bottom of what happened, clear that out, so that people's faith in the Army will be restored, which I think is pretty hard at this point to think that will happen anytime soon. So what can we make of this? On one hand, AMLO is saying kind of, peace and love, I'm not going to prosecute crimes of the past, I'm not going to prosecute Peña Nieto's crimes, I'm not going to spend my time in prosecuting former crimes, because that would take up all the time I have, and he's just kind of trying to say bygones. But on the other hand, he said certain things we're not going to let go, and one of them is Ayotzinapa, but we need an international role in this.
Well, I mean, my guess is that the international role and calling for the UN involvement is kind of a way of taking a pass.
Okay.
Right? I suspect that in many of these issues, but especially in Ayotzinapa, AMLO really, it's a hot potato, and I think that he probably, and maybe even correctly, perceives that there's not much in it for him to try to get to the bottom of what really happened, and there's a lot of potential downside in that. You mentioned the role of the armed forces and the army in the case, and I think you're really right to highlight that. I doubt that AMLO really wants to take on the armed forces. I think that they will be extremely resistant to any kind of investigation that could potentially implicate their involvement or at least negligence in the Ayotzinapa case, which there already is a fair amount of evidence by outside observers and analysts. So, I think unfortunately, my guess is it'll be another example where the most convenient thing for AMLO, if he does win the presidency, is going to be talk about moving on and not being vengeful and so forth. I think that would be a shame. I think it'd be a huge missed opportunity. But that would be my most likely guess, because I think politically it would just be too much of a risk for AMLO to allow any kind of investigation that could seriously implicate the armed forces.
So you see it more of as a buck passing, this idea of an international truth commission?
Yeah, I do. I do. I could be wrong, but that's my guess. I mean, I think he really... I haven't seen any indication that in this or any of the other cases he's really interested in there being a process of accountability and justice that's going to shed light on everything that's happened, because I think he's been really concerned to let the powers that be know that they're not going to be prosecuted if he wins. And I think that's kind of a deal with the devil that he's made.
And so the powers that be, either the military powers with regards to things like Ayotzinapa and the international financial powers, kind of going to Washington, going to New York, saying we're not going to expropriate, we're not going to,
and the political and economic elite of the country that have been involved in a lot of these cases of corruption and so forth. Because I think, and he could be right, that he's concerned that since they've shown themselves of being capable of almost anything in the past, I think that his concern, and maybe correctly, probably correctly, is that if they were really worried, the people who have been involved in all these cases of corruption, that they could end up in jail, that they'd find some kind of way to not allow him into the presidency. So I think that is a deal that he's made. Whether he keeps that deal after he's elected, I hope he doesn't, right? And I also hope I'm wrong, because it's a very tacit, implicit, kind of under-the-table, behind-the-scenes deal. So we're filling in blanks and interpreting, right? But that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Kind of what I've heard from some people on the Morena side, because I've asked them, I said, do you think he's compromising too much? He's kind of playing it safe with the army, playing it safe with the national elite, playing it safe with the international elite, and kind of maybe naively they're saying it's kind of ninth dimensional chess. He's saying what he needs to say to get elected with the knowledge that the Mexican presidency and a hierarchical authoritarian system continues to be very powerful, and he just needs to get there and then do what he needs to do once he's there.
Well, and that's possible. I hope they're right. I think in the case of the armed forces, and that's what really he bumps up against in the case of Ayotzinapa, because you can't have a full accounting of what happened in Ayotzinapa without going up against the armed forces. Yeah. And I would be very surprised to see him do that. I think it would be good if he could figure out a way to bring some more accountability and to make some changes with the armed forces, including, by the way, reducing their role in internal security.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is another huge issue, which he hasn't shown any inclination to touch at all, either.
No, he hasn't spoken out against the internal security law, which has been, two judges have recently ruled it unconstitutional, fortunately, but he didn't speak out against it before those rulings.
Yeah. So I would guess, and he might not be wrong, that if you're, in a sense, taking on the political and economic elite of the country, the last thing you need is also to take on this kind of de facto power, which are the armed forces, which in Mexico are not very visible like other Latin American countries, but they're not to be trifled with either.
Well, remember, the Secretary of Defense in Mexico is a military person. It's not a civilian, and that's the way it's always been in Mexico.
Yeah.
Vamos a hacer esta noticia en español, luego la abrimos a sus preguntas. We'll open up to your questions afterwards. AMLO estuvo ayer en Iguala, Guerrero, el lugar donde bien sabemos donde fueron desaparecidos los 43 estudiantes de la escuela rural normal de Ayotzinapa. Fue increpado por los padres de familia de los 43 desaparecidos, y él anunció en caso de ganar, él va a establecer una comisión de la verdad bajo el ámbito o con el apoyo de las Naciones Unidas para llegar a eso, a lo que pasó, ¿no? Y hacer una investigación a fondo. Esto, como dijimos en inglés, esto como que hay preocupaciones de la derecha que no quiere ver a su institución preciosa del ejército que sufra alguna pérdida de prestigio, ¿no? Y también preocupaciones de la izquierda que dice, bueno, si se toca demasiado ahí la bestia del ejército, quién sabe qué estarían capaces de hacer, ¿no? El punto, Jason, tu punto en inglés fue que tú crees que esta idea de la Comisión de Verdad con apoyo internacional es un poco una manera de eludir el asunto un poco. Tienes que decir algo, no puedes no hablar de Ayotzinapa, aunque los otros candidatos no han mencionado a Ayotzinapa para nada, ¿no? Obviamente Marichui sí en su momento. Habla bien de que AMLO sí fue a Iguala, sí fue, no es que sí fue a mostrar la cara, sí dio la cara, pero sí tienes un punto ahí de que un primer gobierno de un partido progresista en la historia del país, que ya tiene muchas cosas que atacar en términos de la economía, en términos de pobreza, la inexistencia de un Estado de Derecho. También ir en contra del ejército, tal vez tú dices, sería un paso demasiado en esas circunstancias, ¿o cómo lo ves?
Sí, o sea, me imagino que así lo ve...
O ese es su cálculo, pues.
Me imagino que así lo ve López Obrador y varios de sus consejeros. No estoy seguro que en realidad sí sería demasiado arriesgado. Yo creo que, bueno, sería arriesgado, pero pues podría tener un buen beneficio.
Sí.
Sí es que tiene el interés de subordinar a las Fuerzas Armadas de manera más fuertemente al poder ejecutivo elegido cívico. Es importantísimo. ¿No? Que para una democracia es algo muy importante. Yo creo que sí podría traer beneficios, sobre todo, o sea, si hay remitir a la ONU una investigación no se puede perder, porque o no concluyen nada muy fuerte y ahí se queda, o en el caso de que tienen evidencia muy clara para involucrar a algunos miembros de las Fuerzas Armadas, sí, pues aprovechar de eso, de hacer algunas reformas y así subordinar a las Fuerzas Armadas. Ahora, eso no es sin sus riesgos, ¿no? Porque la Fuerza Armada obviamente reaccionaría de manera muy negativa, pero yo creo que sí podría abrir una oportunidad de establecer un poco más control cívico sobre los castrenses.
Y vale la pena mencionar que las acusaciones o lo que se postula, lo que pasó hipotéticamente esa noche, el ejército queda muy mal librado, ¿no? Es decir, hay acusaciones de que el ejército participó de alguna manera en la desaparición, o por lo menos permitió que los cuerpos de los 43 fueron o cremados o eliminados en alguna parte de su base militar, ¿no? Es decir, esto es algo muy, pero muy grave, ¿no? Si estamos hablando de algún tipo de colusión con el crimen organizado y algún tipo de colusión en desaparecer evidencias y cuerpos, ¿no? Es decir, eso no es poca cosa, ¿no?
Y ahora, este dilema de que podría enfrentar a AMLO es un dilema que le ha enfrentado varios líderes democráticos en países latinoamericanos después de transición a la democracia, ¿no? Ocurrió en Argentina, ocurrió en Chile. Después, ¿qué hacemos con las Fuerzas Armadas? Y generalmente sobre todo ese primer periodo, después, o sea, cuando se empieza una transición a la democracia, el gobierno elegido generalmente ha sido muy reacio de confrontar a las Fuerzas Armadas. Sin embargo, eventualmente se dan cuenta que sí tienen que hacerlo.
Ajá.
Y los escándalos de que pues, se difunden sobre integrantes de las Fuerzas Armadas, pues al final les ayudan para reimponer el control cívico sobre las Fuerzas Armadas.
Esperemos que esto pase. We're going to go to some of your questions now. We do have a question from Javier Alarcón. Hello, Javier. The question is this part of AMLO's strategy to co-opt people from all wings of Mexican politics? Is this part of the same strategy to kind of try to pick off the elites and neutralize elite opposition? I think that's an interesting question. We've seen AMLO create a kind of a very unwieldy coalition, electoral coalition, which includes people like on the left, real progressive, like Noroña, Fernandez Noroña, or Paco Ignacio Taibo II, kind of real the progressive wing of Morena that wants to see Pemex nationalized again, that wants to see the president rule by decree if Congress balks at certain measures. I mean, really, kind of want to take a harder line there. And then you've got, on the other hand, people like Manuel Espino, Germán Martinez, former heads of the PAN. I think in Mexican politics, ideology really takes a back seat. And so you see people going all over the place and chapulinear, which was the Broncos word, jumping from party to party as the winds blow. And that's unfortunately just a feature of Mexican politics. So what do you think, Jason? Do you think this goes back to AMLO's knowing that he has a lot against him as potentially the first progressive government with regards to national and international elites plus the armed forces? Is he being clever in creating this very anti-ideological coalition which includes a right-wing party and Encuentro Social? Or is it simply, they blocked me twice, I want to get to the presidency this time, and this is just expediency and political opportunism?
I'd go more with the second.
Okay.
But I can't say for sure. It's it's a little bit of speculation. But I think it's also, here's the thing that's important to keep in mind, is his party, Morena, is a new party, right? And so in order to try to gain a parliamentary majority or a majority in the Congress, he did have to make some deals with some devils, right? Because his party is just too new. It doesn't have enough of a base. So I would say mainly expediency. I think it's going to create some problems for him once he's in power, but I understand the logic behind it. And I think given the previous two elections, that it's understandable.
Let's comment just a second on why it's difficult to have a new party in Mexico. Mexican politics traditionally works on a corporatist model. So a party like the PRI did for decades allies itself with trade unions and other organizations in order to basically get this corporatist vote out. So they're basically machine politics. It's like a Tammany Hall machine style politics writ large on the national level. The PRI has been in existence under different names, but since the revolution, since the late since the 20s when this whole system began to assemble itself, the PAN has been in existence since 1939. So it took the PAN from 1939 to 2000 to elect a president. Morena was founded after the 2012 elections. It certainly doesn't have that corporatist, and I think hopefully shouldn't want to replicate that structure. It certainly has kind of elements of López Obrador's coalitions from previously, the PID and when he was in government in Mexico City. But Morena doesn't have representation in a lot of small towns, which is traditionally where most electoral fraud takes place, if it does, because there aren't observers there. It doesn't have enough people to have observers in all the electoral precincts. So having a new party weighs a lot in Mexico, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Muy brevemente en español, la pregunta de Javier Alarcón fue acerca de si AMLO sabe que tiene mucho en su contra en cuanto a élites nacionales, élites internacionales, poderes fácticos tanto dentro y fuera del país y tanto las Fuerzas Armadas. Si es por eso que él está intentando formar una coalición muy amplia con tal de neutralizar los efectos de eso. Ahora vemos que tenemos en la Morena desde figuras como Fernández Noroña y Paco Ignacio Taiba a un lado, hasta Manuel Espino y Germán Martínez al otro, personas que ideológicamente no tienen nada que ver en uno al otro. Entonces yo pregunté a Jason en inglés si esto es más este movimiento táctico o prudente, o si tiene también un elemento de oportunismo político, y tú decantabas por la segunda opción, ¿no?
Sí, o sea, una combinación de las dos.
Una combinación
pero,
de los dos.
Sí.
Sí.
Ahora, otra cosa que se me olvidó mencionar es que, y esto surgió en nuestra reunión de la otra noche,
que vamos a subir pronto, ¿no?
De que también hay muchos élites que ya están muy desencantados, tanto con el PRI obviamente y también con el PAN,
Sí.
¿no? Y están más dispuestos de colaborar. Entonces yo creo que...
Sí, los élites no es una élite uniforme.
Claro, o sea, hay que ver el otro lado, y en el otro sentido no solamente viene de una estrategia de AMLO y Morena,
Ajá.
sino que hay unos que sí quieren integrar a la campaña y al futuro gobierno de AMLO, no solamente por intereses cínicos, que no falta eso,
No, que no falta.
¿no? Pero también porque hay unos que realmente sí creen que pues es tiempo para un cambio.
Okay.
¿No?
Incluso ahí, ¿no? Y creo que ese fue el punto de John Ackerman, que hay que aprovechar el hecho de que hay una ruptura en las élites, ¿no? Es decir, muchas veces, ¿no? Y hay que decir las cosas como son, no es suficiente que haya un movimiento progresista para poder llegar a poder. También tiene que haber división entre las élites, y ese es el caso de 2018, ¿no? En México. So I have a question from Marnie Fleming. I think this is a really good question. I want to put this to you, Jason, and the question is this. AMLO certainly appears willing to provide no end of assurances to the army, powerful economic interests, and so on. But as Brazil most recently and other cases from Latin America make clear, these kinds of concessions don't seem to matter in the end. So my question is, why make them in the first place? Entonces la pregunta es, AMLO parece muy dispuesto a hacer todo tipo de concesiones al ejército y otros intereses económicos muy poderosos, etc. Pero, como vimos más recientemente en el caso de Brasil y otros países de América Latina, esto hace claro que esos tipos de concesiones y arreglos, a fin de cuentas, pues no importa al final. No, I think the question is talking about kind of what some analysts have called the soft coup in Brazil, that even though Lula and the Workers' Party made alliances with the business elites and even made electoral alliances with the right-wing party that then took on the impeachment case against him, none of that seemed to matter in the end when it was a question of the impeachment and then a question of imprisoning Lula. What do you have to say to that?
Well, it's an excellent point. I would say that I guess the key is there's one thing about trying to avoid antagonizing some powerful forces in specific moments, maybe. I think you do have to be a little bit strategic. But I agree with the thrust of the question, especially when it comes to having a clear ideological orientation. Right? Because, and we could even say this happened to the Democrats in the United States, to the Labour Party in the UK, in trying to occupy this centrist position that is kind of not pissing off any of the powers that be, especially economically, politically, etc. You actually don't really get the support of your natural base, and which is in many cases a majority of the country, because you end up in making these deals getting into some really, messy arrangements, including some corrupt arrangements, and so I think it is a big risk, and I would be a little bit concerned if he's elected, if AMLO does pursue that kind of a strategy.
Entonces, básicamente, para español dices que estás de acuerdo con la idea general de la pregunta, en el sentido de que lo que hemos visto con varios partidos progresistas que han ido al centro en varios países es que no solo no ganan a la derecha, sino que pierden su base de apoyo natural en la izquierda, quedan un poco naufragados en el centro y pierden su timón en cuanto a su ideología.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. I think we come to the end of MexElects for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We're here in Monterrey. We'll be back in Oaxaca next week for a little bit of a breather and get some of the videos up that we need to get from this trip. And then we'll be back on the road for all of June covering the election. And we'll actually be going to Morelia and we'll be talking to some people who were involved in some of these self-defenses to find out what was really going on there. I think that's going to be a really interesting chapter to illuminate more of the Nestora Salgado and Mireles cases. So stay with us. If you want to donate, please go to the donate button. It's MexElects.com. Your support helps us to continue to be able to travel, to be able to do videos, interviews, and programs like this. So thank you very much, and we'll be back next week.